Okay, well, welcome along to another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. And today, I got some exciting news.
All right.
I think. We'll see how excited people get.
We'll be the judge of that.
We'll be the judge of that. There is rumor from our creative department that the Sweet Tea and Coffee podcast is potentially going to be designing and distributing stickers for people to show themselves to be friends of the pod.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
I was trying to figure out where you were going, like...
With the big news?
Yeah, with the big news, because I didn't know there were big news. But I remember that now.
So now what we have to do is we have to figure out an actual standard. Because listen, we're not passing these out to just anybody.
Right. Maybe we should get like little medals, like little ribbon medals.
Yeah, that's right.
You get more appropriate.
If you've listened to a certain number of episodes, you get a sticker.
It's got a little number on there.
But you get some sort of medal if you've listened to all of the episodes or whatever. I don't know, but who knows if that'll even happen. But I was pretty excited.
Yeah, so get your sticker.
Earn your sticker.
Earn your sticker.
That's right. Just kidding. Okay, well, this is going to be a fun show. We've got Jordan Allen in the house. If you don't know Jordan, he is a non-native Texan. He's an Oklahoma man that has moved
I had to get somebody that was not born in West Texas, so that's what...
That's right. We'll just deal with it today. But anyways, moved here, and he and his wife are doing ministry here in Nacogdoches, specifically on the SFA campus. We're going to get into their story a little bit, and excited to have Jordan here. What episode number is this?
43, I think.
We are creeping towards the big 50.
Yeah.
We have 5,000 listens and 50 episodes almost.
We're up to like 5,200 listens now. I mean, we're just rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I think that they call that viral.
That's right.
Okay.
In some cultures, they call that viral.
That's right. In our world. Hey, thanks for sticking around. It's going to be a fun episode. Hang out with us. Okay, well, as we said, we've got Jordan Allen here, and we just laughed a little bit on the intro to the show. Jordan said, "I love how the standard for me being invited on was just that I'm not from here."
I mean,
that's it.
That's pretty special.
That's pretty special. You are unique. You can do that. You can do that. No, we are excited to have Jordan here and talk about their journey, his journey, his family's journey here to Texas and the ministry that they are doing on campus. But I think the place to start is that we've got Jordan in a pretty awkward spot here. Because so I knew Jordan originally when they first moved here several years back. Met Jordan, met his wife, and but knew them just pretty surface level until and then kind of got to know them a little bit more, just seeing them at church and interacting with them there. But then Jordan asked me to lunch, and I think this would have been our first time to sit down for a meal or coffee or anything, and Jordan employed his famous strategy, which was ask a ton of questions. So I'll never forget, we're sitting at Nuke's, and actually I saw him there the other day at Nuke's, sitting in the same exact spot with a student.
Which is the same spot that we set like the week before.
He has like this strategy
routine
where he asks all these questions. And now, I love this. Blake, you and I have him in the spot where he's not going to ask any questions. We're going to ask. So how does it feel to be in the?
I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, I don't know. Like it does. It feels very weird, out of my element.
Well, thanks for being uncomfortable for us and for all of our listeners. Let's start there. I would love just to. When did you start to employ the question asking strategy? Where did that become part of your arsenal?
So, when I was a school teacher, I was a terrible English teacher. Like I really was. Like I always joke around, like if I was a good English teacher, I'd have been an amazing teacher. Like I was good at relating to kids. And so one of the things that I would do is if I had a student who is a tough student is I would start asking a bunch of questions like, hey, what video games do you like? What TV shows? And I would just try to find something relatable. And so coming here, it was a lot of the same stuff because that's what you're doing. You're going out there and you're like building relationships with students on campus. And so you're like, what's your story? But you try to do it in a way that they don't feel uncomfortable. You do it in a way that's like, all right, this person cares, that, they want to hear my story and stuff like that. So it's asking questions, but being intentional with those and like, here's what I'm really trying to get to, like, opposed to just like, what's your favorite color? Like, no, I want to be intentional with this question. Like, hopefully it can give me a certain amount of information to know who you are. Yeah. So really when I was teaching, but when I came here is a lot of the same stuff. So
yeah. Well, and we're going to get to this part of your story because I just think that's cool that you learned that in a teaching environment, and now you use that in your day-to-day work. We were talking the other day about, one of your areas of emphasis ministry-wise is the SFA baseball team. And the way it started was an open invitation to just come and be around. Yeah. But you're kind of dropped into these cultures and scenarios where you're an outsider.
Don't belong.
You don't belong at all. You stick out like a sore thumb. And how do you connect? And so the use of question really plays into that. I'm going to get to that because you being in those scenarios is really fascinating. And I think it'd be cool for people to hear just what your ministry world looks like. But let's start where we start off the show. Where are you from, and what did life look like growing up, and how on earth did you make your way to Nacogdoches, Texas?
So I'm from Oklahoma City area. Grew up going to church, was involved with that. And then that was kind of obviously like the start of it. I don't really like to call it a calling. It is a calling, but I don't like to call it that because I think a lot of people, they're like, well, I didn't have this specific calling. So they're like, maybe that's not for me. It was like, I just had this desire, even at a young age, to kind of like be in ministry. And I knew I wanted for sure work with people. And so did this, like went through high school, was real involved with youth group, stuff like that. And then went to college. I was a typical statistic in college where I went to college, grew up like in church, was a youth intern for my first 2 years of college. And then my last 2 years had a rough patch where I was kind of wrestling internally of like, all right, like Jesus is my savior, but do I really want to make him my Lord? Because no one's waking you up to go to church and Sunday when you move out and stuff like that.
Where'd you go to school?
Oklahoma State.
Okay. So you stayed fairly close to home then?
Yes. Yes. Okay. And so went through that period, and then I decided like, all right, like wanted to make my faith my own. So then I started getting involved with Crew, Campus Crusade, met Aaron there. We were
at Oklahoma State or with Crew or
at Oklahoma State. Yeah. Okay. And at a fall retreat, we were two-stepping. She couldn't resist my moves. No. So
you know that this is recorded and public.
Yeah. So she's going to be able to like be like, that is not true. But it's her word against mine at this point.
That's right.
So so I started getting involved. And she was interning with Crew, and so she wanted to get into ministry, and I had just gone through this rough patch, and I was like, if I told people at this point, like, even though like I still had that desire, like I felt like they'd laughed at me. But there was also a part where like I was wrestling like my worth, like, all right, can God use me? Does he? Like, this is what I just went through in college, 2 years of kind of this rebellion, not kind of like this internal rebellion, and like, who am I? So, but like I was on the right track, like I was growing in my faith. And then I became a school teacher, and Aaron got a job at our church back home as the assistant youth pastor. And I kind of saw school teaching as my ministry. But the longer I went in that, I just felt like God was just continuing to grow this desire. And I ran from that desire for years. Didn't even talk to Aaron about it. It was like, there were times where I'd be like laying in bed, like praying, like, God, remove this desire. And he didn't. So I finally went to Aaron. I was like, hey, this is what God's putting on my heart. Think we need to go. Shocked her. So wait, so what do you mean think you needed to go? We weren't supposed to be, like, I was willing to go wherever he sent us. I didn't feel like I was supposed to be a school teacher anymore because I saw in that I cared about people, and it was really hard. It's a real quick story. Like, we had this kid who, he went to school one day, and he came home, and his mom moved out, left him. like just abandoned him.
Oh my word.
So he was living for like 2 or 3 days under like this overpass, and he would come to school and get food. And so I just remember coming, we'd have this meeting about this kid, and the principals are like, what can we do for this kid? And it was like, and I'm an English teacher, and they're like, education's the answer. And I was just like, it was just really hard for me to continue to fake like education is important. Obviously, I would never, but it's like this, there's a bigger answer here. And it was like, it was things like that. Now just God was just continuing to put that. And so I just kind of grew in that interest of like, I would never, downplay. I was a school teacher, like education, but it's like, man, you take somebody who doesn't have a relationship with the Lord and you give them the greatest education, and they just have an an education, like they're still without Christ. So that was kind of like things that just, you see a lot of brokenness in public schools. At least I did. And so just kind of grew in that, and God just continued to put that desire. So I told Erin, I was like, man, I think we need to go to ministry. And it shocked her, but she prayed about it, and because she was already in ministry. And so she was like, let's go. And so, we sold our home, we quit our job, and then we raised support. We did that for a year, which was a really faith-stretching time, but amazing time. And there's a placement coordinator and crew, and they were like, where do you want to go? And that was scary because I was like, well, I would like to go here, here, or here. But I was like, man, if God's calling me, I can't say, well, I'll only go here. Yeah. So I said, I have my preferences, and I told them, but I was like, I'll go wherever you send me. And they, what was funny is I said, I don't want Greek ministry. That was my one requirement. And so they were like, okay, great. Well, we need you at SFA, and you'll be doing Greek ministry. And so I was like, okay. So
that whole part about preferences and why did we go through
one ear out the other? They had an idea, and they were just happy that people were like, hey, I'll go. So we drove into town too, and like as we did, we're like, this is where we're going to be.
So you knew where you were going to go before you had been here. You had been assigned.
They assign you, but we didn't. We were like almost done with our support raising before we even came into town. So like we had been raising support for a year, and then we went and we came here for like a weekend.
Give people just a real quick the elevator pitch on Campus Crusade. I think that's a very common name. People probably know what that is, but some people may not know what that is. And that became the vehicle that you guys signed on with, the group that you guys signed on with that sent you here. So what's Campus Crusade, and why do they have any interest in SFA and college campuses?
Campus Crusade started on a college campus, and what it is it's just recognizing kind of like the next generation, and they see that the campus is a great launching point. Yeah. So we have this saying within Crew, it's like win, build, send. Like the goal is to win people to Christ, build them up in their faith in the 4 years, and then they're going to naturally go out. Yeah. So I don't have to be like, hey, where are you going after, we get done meeting? Like they're doing it anyway. Yeah. And so it's taking, the hope is that when they leave, wherever they go, whether it's business into their home, they go as a missionary and just have that mindset. Yeah. Here we kind of operate a little bit differently. We have like specific target audiences, and that's, I think, a lot because Nacogdoches has a lot of churches, Bible Belt. So there's a lot of great college ministries where people can go get involved. So what we specifically try to do is we go to areas where maybe we just have the luxury that sometimes maybe, I guess, the church doesn't have, if you want to word it that way. It's like, like the church, a lot of times it's like, hey, we're here. Like this is where we're at on Sunday mornings. Like our attitude is like, I'm going to go where you are. Kind of like where you reference, like I'm going to go stand out on the baseball field. And it may be awkward for me. Yeah. But like I just have that luxury that I can go stand out there for an afternoon and stuff. So we do that with specifictically the fraternities, the sororities, and with the athletes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, because I've heard Vince Walsh, who is what would his title be?
He's a team lead.
Okay, so he's a team lead. So he's kind of overseeing the team here in Nacogdoches. I've heard him talk a lot about playing away games. We just want to play away games as much as we can, get on other people's turf. So you and Erin are fairly new in your in your marriage, you announced this, I assume. I mean, how long had you been married when you announced this call to ministry and then drop everything and here we go?
4 years.
Okay.
So I mean, it was long enough that like, she was like, all right, I'm in this.
Yeah.
but it was, we had got settled. That was what was hard. I mean, I'd been teaching, and she had a job that she loved, and she was kind of, I don't know if I should say this on a podcast recording, but she was just like, are you serious? Like, I wanted to go to Cru right after college. Like, why
Where were you?
now? Yeah. It was just like, cause she had interned, she had gone through the support raising process and everything like that, and done this all before. And then like, I was like, no, let's go do this. I don't know how I feel about this right now. And then to come back to it later. But she was like, that was one of the most amazing things. She was like, if this is where you feel like God's calling, which is a huge ask. Cause it's like, let's sell the house. Let's quit our jobs. Yeah. And she was like, if that's what you think, like, let's go.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, so what's that like? I mean, I think for a lot of people, when God really gets a hold of their life, it doesn't necessarily involve a location change. I mean, I would say a large majority of people, that's not necessarily the case. But sometimes when God gets hold of our life and when we submit to him, sometimes God moves us around. We change vocation, we change location. I mean, there's sometimes things that change. For you guys, it was a fairly abrupt, total change. What's it like to just have everything in a sense uprooted and go through a whole support raising process, go to a completely new community in a completely new world? I mean, what was that process like for you guys?
So now that we're through it, like, it's real easy to be like, oh, it's amazing. During it, it's really, really challenging. Yeah. I never want to say anything too hard about it because I don't ever want to discourage somebody. Like, if somebody's feeling that calling, it's like, even though it was challenging, somebody who has like ran from ministry, like even facing the challenges of moving, support raising, everything, like I was more at peace in those moments of hard times than I was at the times where I was like, I felt God was calling me to it. And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. Like there was just a peace. It was honestly like, looking back, one of the most amazing experiences because you have people who, first off, it's the most humbling thing. People are giving from their finances. And we have, some of the people who like supported us and continue to support us, like, it's hard to even like talk about it without getting emotional. Like, we have this, I remember one, like, it was challenging, but you'd get these glimpses of just something amazing where God was providing. And we had this one, it was a high school girl, where she set up the giving. We didn't talk to her. I mean, she was just got out of junior high, and Aaron called her up because she was in the youth group and was like, hey, like, you set up this giving. And it was, for a high school girl, it was a decent amount. And any amount's amazing. I want to say that too, but it was just like, what is this? And she was like, hey, I heard what you're doing. I think it's great. And, I babysit, and that's where that money's coming from. And so it's like, here you're seeing this monthly come in of this girl who babysits and, just supports you. So you feel that. It's like where other jobs, like when I worked at like UPS, is like, you get a paycheck. It's like, I don't care where it's coming from. It's like, it's in my bank account. But when you see people giving, it's very humbling. It's very encouraging. And then just the way that God provides, like we have so many amazing stories where like we see this, God's provision, and it's hard not to get like emotional, sappy about it. It's like a sweet provision of just God bringing it all in. So
that's amazing. So you get here and you guys are getting yourselves oriented to all that is Nacogdoches, and you get dropped into the one place that you said you didn't really want to go. You get dropped into Greek life. What was that like? How did you deal with that?
I don't know if like I do it the right way, but like I give myself a lot of like mental like talks, like, I'm walking into like this fraternity house, and I remember the first one, I was like, I walked in this fraternity house, and
help people understand kind of what, like, just take us through a scenario.
Yeah, I just feel like that's an unknown world.
Nobody knows what you're. Like, does someone just say to you, "All right, Jordan, here's the address. Go in and make a difference," and that's it?
So what do you? I mean, you kind of have to make your own ministry.
Yeah.
Like so like the way that I did it is like I would get the numbers to all the presidents of the chapter and be like, hey, can I come speak to your chapter? And so you have to get the invite. You can't obviously just walk into a chapter,
knock on the door.
So you have to. A lot of times the presidents will be like, obviously, like, who are you? What do you? So you like a lot
what's
of
your
times,
angle?
Yeah, I have to sit down like with a cup of coffee and like talk to him. Like, here's what I want. So basically, you have to do if you want to call it a pitch, to them, and then they're like, yeah, you can come speak to our chapter. So then you walk into the chapter.
Oh man,
and it like with the fraternities, they are like very structured, formal. They want to like image is very important. Like, they come in and they're like a lot of times dressed up when they have a speaker, which is like, dude, don't dress up for me. Like, I'm not worth it. Like, but you'll like walk in and they're like, they'll be applauding you as you're like walking in. You're like, you guys don't clap. Don't clap for me. You're going to be so disappointed. Like, I'm not. So you come in and they're like applauding. And so you basically like, hey, this is who I am. Here's why I'm wanting to invest in you. I think that you guys have a lot to offer. I think that, you guys are a worthwhile investment. And then you kind of sit there and say, like, here's what that investment looks like. I meet with guys one-on-one, Bible studies, stuff like that. And then you pass out like contact cards is kind of like what we do. And that's just how it started. And so, yeah, you kind of go in there and you go in blind and you're just like, they may, and for the first time, like that's what I did the first time. It's, and they may, you don't know what to expect because all you think about when you think of fraternities is you think of like a movie,
right?
And it's not like that at all. A lot of, they're just guys who are like, hey, this is networking. We're
right.
A lot of positive things to it that we never hear the positives. And so that's how it started. And then you kind of, where doors open, you gotta kind of just go quick. And so, yeah.
So back to the pep talk. So there's this mental preparation that takes place.
Yeah. So you gotta walk in and you're like, I belong here. No, this is, like
my house.
Like you pull up to this place and like you're sitting in your car and you're like, I got 5 more minutes. I'm like, no, this is mine. You gotta like kind of talk tough to yourself in the car because you get out and like you're standing in front of a group of guys and you're like if you come ask me to talk to a youth group, it's like, okay, like I've been in a youth group.
You know what to expect.
Yeah. And so like here you're just like, try me, like, you're just like, I hope they ask questions. I'm ready. You're just like psyching yourself up because it's very intimidating your first few times. And then you have to, you say all that like, but you just rely on God. It's like, all right. I mean, there's obviously a lot of prayer in those moments too of like, all right, God, like I'm going in, I can only do what you've asked me to do. And so whatever you want that to look like, man, I'm going to do it. And if somebody responds, somebody wants to meet, somebody wants to hear what I have to say, like, I'll be ready. Like I can just go where you send me. And so that's kind of what you mentally do. So it's a lot of prayer, a lot of like psyching yourself up because it's real easy to, if just being honest, it's real easy to start believing lies. Like, all right, you're 36, you were in a fraternity, you're bald. I mean, it's just like, it's like,
you started listing off all the things that make
just
you
like,
uncool.
Like, it's like I have car seats in the back of my car. I got Frozen music on my radio. Like there's nothing cool about me. So it's like you can start like, psyching yourself up the opposite direction. So you kind of you do. It's a lot of trying to be mindful and walking in the power of the Holy Spirit is the honest answer.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. Well, and so you did Greek life for a while. And now or maybe you're still doing, maybe I'm messing this up. I know you're now very involved with the baseball team. And and as I understand it was a very similar sort of introduction process. You just were given permission by those who are in leadership to be around, and you kind of had to go through that same thing again, right?
Yeah. With baseball, there was an assistant coach who was here and he was like, yeah, you can come out to baseball. And so I did. and I didn't know anybody. And so I just went and stood there. And the worst part about it is like, I didn't play baseball. So it's like,
this is a theme.
This is a theme. It is. It's like, that's why I tell people, it's like, I've done like, it's really hard for me to take any credit for anything. It's like, it's clearly God, because it's like, I'm out there and I'm asking questions. I'm like, hey, what are those things? And they're looking at me like I'm dumb. Like, these are baseball bats. Like, I mean, it's just like, I just don't know anything about it.
Clearly you belong here.
Yeah. And so, it's put me in environments that I went into fraternity. I didn't play baseball. I was a football player. So, it was like that. So the first time I went out there, the coach was like, hey, just go sit in the dugout. And which to me was like going in somebody's home and be like, yeah, just go sit on the couch. Like, it was like, I'm not
without introducing yourself, without being invited over.
Yeah.
You're just going to go sit on someone's couch.
Yeah. And so like, I'm just sitting there and they're coming in and out of the dugout and I'm just like, hey, good hit, man. Like I just, and I did that, for like, in all honesty, like a whole season.
Wow.
And it was every day. I mean, you talk about psyching yourself up. Every day I was like driving out there. I was like, okay, like we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And then the next season rolled around and guys, like it kind of just got to be like, okay, this guy's here and more conversations.
He won't go away.
Yeah. And more conversations like start happening because I mean, you're there. And then COVID hit, I think right after that. And so that cut that season short. So then I had to basically come out and start it over again. But then we were very blessed. The coach was like, hey, would you guys be interested in doing a talk on Wednesday, like a little devotional with the team? And then that got like the ball rolling a whole lot. And we got a guy who's out there too. We got a good group of guys out there who are like, I know you guys have met some of them, but they're like, really, they see baseball as a way to bring glory to God, like through their gifts and abilities. And so, they're out there, and without those guys too, like, I mean, I'm just a guy going out there, but they're the ones who are out there every day traveling with the team. And so because of that and the opportunity to go speak to the team, we've just been put in a good position, good favor. So it's been going well.
Cool. But and that's cool to see how the Lord even would unite you and these other guys that he's obviously called, and he's fashioned their heart and their mind to understand that baseball is a platform, and that he would bring you alongside them, and the way that he weaves y'all's lives together for his glory. That's cool to see just how God uses different pieces, unexpected pieces. You're sitting in the dugout thinking, it's just me, I'm by myself.
Yeah.
And yet all the while there's guys passing you that God's also working on and calling and helping them to understand that this is a platform for him, and then bringing you together. That's really cool. What have you, I think I'd love to just dive in a little bit on the idea of the away games. I love how Vince talks about that. I think that's a really cool way of seeing it. You've now done this for a few years. You guys have been here how long?
4 years.
Okay. So you've been here for 4 years. You've been playing away games for 4 years in places that were completely foreign to you. You stepped in, played the long game, just being present over and over and over again, and relationships have come from that. What have been some of the things that you've learned in having to put yourself in those situations for a long? I mean, that's every day you're doing that. What have been some big takeaways?
One of those is kind of that. Well, the biggest one is that you can handle it. Like, it's okay if I feel uncomfortable. Like, if what's interesting is, and we've had guys tell us this. So when we do our Bible studies for the fraternities, we started doing them, and this was Vince's. It wasn't me at all, but in the back room of like bars. Like, so we were like at Max or Frogs or stuff like that, because that's where they do a lot of their like hangouts and stuff like that. So it's like they feel comfortable going in there. Like I don't at this point, so it's one of those things where it's like, it's just kind of being intentional and having that mindset of like, this is about you right now. Like this, and like I go to church, like I do Bible studies, I do this, I have those moments for me. This is about you. And just recognizing that like in those moments, just that you're mission minded. And so that was really big. And because I've had guys who have told us like, man, we love coming to your Bible study, and be like, well, great, man. Like, you want to go to church or stuff like that, because that's what your hope is,
Right.
because they're not going to graduate and then continue to come meet with us. You hope to send them in and go into church. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of moments where guys are like, man, I don't know how I feel about going to church yet, because they've had some bad experiences or whatever. And so it's just a luxury we have of like, man, I can take the awkwardness. I can take the being in a setting that I'm not comfortable. Like, I want you to, like, it's about you. And so just having, developing more of an eternal perspective and being mission minded in the right moments.
But it takes, I mean, I hear you saying that it takes a recognition that my discomfort is not going to go away.
Yeah.
Just because I'm obedient
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm going to all of a sudden be comfortable in this environment.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay uncomfortable. And it's just kind of like getting used to that, embracing the idea that I'm choosing to be uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's the same as like going into fraternities and stuff now. Like I feel a little more comfortable at baseball. There are still settings in baseball. I don't, but going into fraternity, I don't know that I'll ever go into a chapter meeting and not get like serious butterflies. And I feel uncomfortable because, as you're walking in, you're like, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, you can, like I said, you can try to psych yourself up to think you do, but you don't. So but it's just kind of leaning into that and being like, that's okay. Yeah. So I'd rather be the one that feels uncomfortable than them in this moment. So.
Wow. Well, so is that where, now kind of maybe back full circle to our question asking, but is that where you really feel like you honed the importance of intentionally asking questions? Did it come from the fact that I'm uncomfortable because I'm in somebody else's space, so the question is really my most powerful tool? Are those things related?
In all honesty, I think question asking is one of the most underutilized tools that Christians use. I mean, there's so much if you're intentional. And I don't want to make it sound like I have the secret of question. It's like, it's just what I use. It can make people feel comfortable. I remember, like, if you remember something, like, hey, we talked last time and I asked you this question. It's like, okay, this guy cares.
Wow.
And so you want to be, and you don't do it to like manipulate, but it's just like, no, this is my way of just showing that I do care. I care about you. I'm not interested in just sitting down and
telling you something.
Right. Well, and I think I heard a quote. It was, we're in school and it was, knowledge can be transferred. Like, faith has to be discovered, and discovered faith leads to life change. And one of the ways that like you do that is you ask questions and like let them process, and sometimes let them sit in difficult questions. Like one of the, but it's everything. Like I'll sit down and one of the questions I ask everybody is like, hey, what was home life like? Are you close to your mom and your dad? And the reason is like, yes, you're getting to know them, you're hearing it, but it's a lot of guys, who their father was is also kind of how they project onto God. So if somebody's like, oh, my dad was, super legalistic, he was this, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it is kind of one of those things like, okay, like keep that in the back of your mind, because what you find out when you're asking questions is a lot of people are like, oh, I don't believe in God. I'm a man of science. And you're like, what does that mean? They're like, well, I don't know. But then you like get to it and you like kind of dive into their background a little bit, and they're like, well, I grew up in church and this happened. It's like, a lot of times what they're saying is not really what they mean. And for guys especially, guys are just, we're not as good at communicating and articulating like what we think, and especially in feel. So it's asking those questions to kind of like get to that. So, but yeah, like asking a question of like, this is the one I end on, like, man, if you were to die today, like how confident are you that you'd spend eternity with God? And I mean, you see the weight of that question, and it's like, let them sit in it for a minute and just be like this is I'm trying to lead you to a discovery of like, man, I need this, So yeah, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of trying to help them discover it, I guess, if you want to word it that way. Because like I said, you can tell people and they'll hear it 1,000 times. And then when they have that moment where it just like clicks. And so questions to me kind of, I've seen kind of speed up that process of discovery. That's my opinion on it.
Well, because I mean, in its basic human nature, we develop superficial ways of dealing with deeper things to keep us from having to deal with deeper things. And so if nobody ever pushes us to go beyond the surface, your example of somebody saying, well, I'm just a man of science. Well, that's not really what's going on.
Right.
That's the answer that has been developed to keep someone from having to really deal with what's going on. And without a question, if somebody just makes that statement and you jump into an argument about science or whatever, you're gonna miss the fact that that's just a diversion.
Right.
The question allows you to get past the diversion and into the why of something. And I love that word discovery. You're facilitating, by asking questions, you're facilitating a process of discovery. And you're, in the same time, you're learning something about them as well. It's not just you're helping them discover themselves or whatever. You're also building relationship in that,
which is massive. I mean, that's, especially with this younger generation, I think relationships are, I mean, I think they're just becoming more and more important. Like, it sounds weird because like you hear it's, it's just like, well, no, just speak truth. It's like, this younger generation feels like they have to, I mean, it's not true, obviously, but they feel like there's no absolute truth, and so they're like, they're having to discover this. And so it's like, just telling them, like, here's the truth. And they're like, well, that's your truth. That's what they think. And so building that relationship of like, all right, this guy cares about me. This guy's, and being vulnerable with him. It's like, hey, man, like I mess up. I do this. Like, I can't, like if they ask me a question in scripture, it's like, and I don't know it. It's like, hey man, I don't know that. That's one that, I also wrestle with. Yeah. So just being vulnerable, being real, building that relationship, asking questions, helping them to, there's a lot that just sitting down, asking questions to me, gets to the heart of a lot of things that this younger generation is needing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we kind of were at the end. We're all three close to the same age. And, I think we probably came in on the very, very, very tail end of evangelism by fact and by evangelism via scientific process, basically like creating an argument, reason, logic was really big in the evangelistic process. It's a proving of God, that sort of thing. We kind of came in on the tail end of that being a huge emphasis, and certainly nothing wrong with that. But this new generation does not operate that way. And would you say, I mean, you're living it day in and day out on a college campus. I'm pretty convinced, and I don't live it as up close and personal as you do every day, but I'm pretty convinced we've really got to get our head around evangelism as a very long game and as a very relational game. The idea of meeting someone and in a few moments convincing them of a set of truths that equals conversion. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I think it's becoming almost extinct. And this new generation and the way that we're going to reach people, particularly in Western culture, is via long-term relationship, building of trust, which involves the question asking, which involves getting to know somebody. And I don't know, I mean, like I said, you're living it up close and personal every day. Would you say that that's true, that you see that total shift having taken place, that reaching someone now is deeply relational and is a very long game? Yeah,
because it is. It's. I mean, I think you have to, because again, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying obviously the same as you, like it can't happen, but when you live in a world where truth is becoming more and more like, just whatever you think. It's like, even if you win a debate, like that's what it's been funny. Sometimes you hear stories where people are like, man, I got in a debate with this guy and I won, but nothing happened.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
It's just like, he was like, and so it is weird because that's been kind of like what you said, the exact opposite of what we've been told. It's like, no, you have to have these answers, but it's recognizing that, I mean, people, this generation too, and this also sounds weird, is heavily influenced by feelings. And so you know that feelings can deceive you. And so you can't just make it all about that. But at the same time, it's like, all right, but you're not going to take that step unless you feel it. And so what can I do in that process? Continue to speak truth. That never changes, but also just be somebody that you can trust and you'll sit down and listen to and I just develop a relationship with. So I think so. But I mean, it will occasionally every once in a while, like when we go to like a retreat or something like that, we'll go out door-to-door evangelism still. And the results of that are way, way different now. I've never had the opportunity to lead somebody to the Lord at door-to-door evangelism. I mean, I'm not, again, I know it happens.
Sure.
But the also thing that I love about relationship is you've established this relationship. So as soon as it's over, it's like, hey man, like I'm not just leaving you. Like I want to hear some steps, here's some things like we want to do. I want to like get you plugged in here. I also want to teach you, how to read the Bible, like stuff like that, where, that was the thing that like, I remember, like doing stuff in the youth group, we do door-to-door evangelism. It's like, and people would share stories about like, this person prayed the prayer. And then it's like, I just remember even in high school being like, but where are they now? Like, are they going to church or like, we just hoping they like Google churches around here and like go. So I think it just, the relationships, encompass so much. And I think it's just something that we naturally do. Like we just, you go to work, you build relationships. I go to a lot of the same restaurants, like you said. It's like you start like knowing people with like, I'm at a point where at some of the restaurants they'll be like, "You want the usual?" It's like I've been here a lot, so it's like, but you just naturally like develop those relationships, and conversations can happen naturally there. So so I think so. I think through relationships,
Well, I'd love to wrap up on this point because I think there's a lot of people that like you said earlier in our chat where you were talking about the idea of call being, I've got to go do something else. I've got to go be in ministry of some organization or something. But the reality is that every single one of us can do exactly what Jordan's describing. Every single one of us can play away games. Wherever your sphere of influence is, wherever the Lord has placed you, there are ways in which you can step into other people's world with care about those individuals, genuinely caring for who they are and their knowledge and understanding of who God is and who God's created them to be. You can care, and then you can, based on that, step into their world and get uncomfortable in their world so that they're comfortable. And if somebody listening is just like, you know what, I need to do that. I've been playing it safe. I've been playing it comfortable. I stay in my own little world. I need to do that. How would you, you've been playing away games now for a lot of years. How would you encourage somebody to begin who realizes that that's what God's called us to do, is to step into other people's territory? What practical or like, where would you just say to somebody, help me begin that journey?
Obviously it's probably the church answer, but it would just be praying about it. Yeah. And the more you pray about it, the more opportunities come up. Like, and then you see, and then it's like recognizing that opportunity and then fighting that fear of being like, okay, like, is this an opportunity? It's like, it is. Like if it presents itself, it is. Like I'll take, like, so, my brother, he married a non-believer. And so she would, it was one of those things that was like, God, like provide an opportunity. I'd love to share the gospel with my, sister-in-law. And, she had a question one time and it was just like, it was about that. And so like, I kind of had to, like, I was really scared because this is my brother's wife and it was like, playing it safe. So I answered this question and then I followed up with another question like, hey, like, why are you asking this? Like where, like just something, just kind of leaned into it. And then questions, and she's in Florida and this was all happening over like Zoom during COVID. And it just, opportunities kept coming and I would, ask her a question. And then like when the conversation came to an end, I'd just kind of like let it sit and be like, oh, well, you think about it. And if you ever have more questions and it was just kind of trying to be intentional. And again, kind of playing the long game. And through that whole process, I actually had the opportunity to share the gospel with her over a Zoom call. She prayed to receive Christ and actually is, It's been, but over a Zoom call during COVID. And so it was one of those things that like, it was just, she started asking questions and I was like, all right, like I've been praying about this.
Yeah.
And here it is. But even then it was still really hard because you're like, you know, if I do this wrong, this is family, like this is my, you know, my brother.
Yeah,
like,
the stakes are high.
I was like, it's like all they have to do is hit the button on the Zoom and I'm gone. It's like, and so, but it was just like, man, this is what I've been praying about. This is what I'm mindful. And the Holy Spirit is going to like, when it's like, when you're praying about it and you're like, God, this is what I want. All of a sudden like for me, it's like the Holy Spirit will like knock me upside the head and be like, right now, what are you waiting for? It's like, he's going to do what the Holy Spirit's going to do. So just not ignoring that and kind of leaning into that awkwardness and it doesn't have to be, it can be the long game. That's what, especially now, I think it can be one of those things where it's like, I'm going to ask a question. Hopefully the way I say it is like, I'll put a rock in your shoe. Like as you leave, like, and you like take your steps throughout the day, you're going to feel that rock. Yeah. Like you're going to think about it. And so that's kind of like the mindset and just being like, it doesn't have to all happen right now.
That's right.
God is sovereign. God is good. God, we do things on his time. And so just kind of recognizing that, but when you're in that moment, just simply do what God has called you to do and leave the results to him. And that is so much easier said than done. Yeah. Because like, you're like, no, it's gotta be now, but, that's what I would just say. And if you mess up, that's the one thing too. You have to recognize like, okay, like somebody asked me this question and I didn't have an answer and I blew it or something like that. It's like, but next time, like, cause a lot of the questions that we get asked over and like, they're similar questions. They're worded differently, but they're pretty similar. And just like, you get better at it. It's just practice. So, that's kind of what I would say.
I love that. Begin by praying for those that are around you, and then assume that an opportunity that looks like an opportunity is
what
an opportunity. That's exactly what you asked for.
Sounds like a fortune cookie thing.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it does. Man, thank you so much for taking the time out of the dugout. You stepped out of the dugout and out of the frat house for a minute
and into another uncomfortable place, which is
being asked a bunch of questions
behind a microphone.
Yes. That's right. So thank you so much for doing that, man. I hope you've been encouraged today. I hope that challenges you and helps you to kind of take whatever step is in front of you in your areas of influence. If you have got any response, any thoughts or ways that this interview has impacted you, we would certainly love to hear that, to hear how you've been challenged, or any of those recent episodes that you may have listened to. We'd love to hear that. And as always, if you've got some interesting folks to, we've had some great response. I'm telling you, we've got a list of people to interview.
We've got a list for multiple seasons of this show.
Oh, okay. Now, so you're gonna tell them that now?
Well, this is the second one, so obviously
this is second season.
We may do a third.
That's right. That's right. There will be a pause in between seasons.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that
later. Yeah.
But different people to interview or different ways that this has impacted you. Blake, how do they reach out and let us know?
Well, they can just come up to us and tell us.
That's right.
Or they could call us.
That's right.
Our number is
Blake's cell phone number.
But, you can email us, and when that works really well. It's stc@fredoniahill.org.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And to be announced, the criteria and the design of Friend of the Pod stickers.
Yeah.
The Gold Club.
The Gold Club. That's right.
Platinum Club.
Oh, this is gonna be great.
Yeah, it's gonna get out of
hand.
hand.
Thanks for listening to this episode. We will see you around. Adios.